The United States first placed financial sanctions on Iran back in 1979 during the hostage crisis. For nearly 4 decades, the U.S. State Department has designated Iran one of the world's leading state sponsors of terrorism. But the Obama administration, along with 5 other countries, agreed to billions of dollars in sanctions relief in exchange for Iran's agreement to dismantle much of its nuclear program and open its facilities to extensive international inspection. The Trump administration, distrusting Tehran, pulled out of the deal and stepped up crushing economic pressure. That's where Ebrahim Raisi found himself when he was elected president a year ago. Last month, Iran and the 61-year-old hardliner were on the verge of striking a new deal, but then Iran submitted demands that sent the nuclear talks into a stalemate. Sir, thank you. I'm Lesley. We met President Raisi Tuesday at the presidential compound in Tehran for his first interview with a Western reporter. I was told how to dress, not to sit before he did, and not to interrupt him. We were given 1 hour for the interview. Can we start with the negotiations on the nuclear deal? Do you want to have that deal renewed? Because, you know, there are some American officials who are beginning to think that you don't.
If it's a good deal and fair deal, we would be serious about reaching an agreement. It needs to be lasting. There needs to be guarantees. If there were a guarantee, then the Americans could not withdraw from the deal.
But you can pull out of the deal. I mean, just as well as we could pull out of the deal.
You see, the Americans broke their promises. They did it unilaterally. They said that, I am out of the deal. Now making promises is becoming meaningless.
Are you saying that you cannot trust the Americans?
We cannot trust the Americans because of the behavior that we've already seen from them. That is why if there is no guarantee, there is no trust.
The U.S. says the West can't trust Iran, for instance, when it claims its nuclear program is purely for peaceful purposes. As far as we can tell, you don't use it for, things that can help your citizens, like electricity. You say that you want it for peaceful reasons. Like what?
Like in medicine, agriculture, oil, gas.
In terms of peaceful purposes, one available figure from the UN nuclear watchdog agency, the IAEA, is that only 1.8% of the country's electricity is generated by nuclear power. There seems to be some evidence that you had been working, at least before, toward a weapon, and that you might be doing that again.
We have responded to these claims several times. They are baseless. The Islamic Republic of Iran has said many times that possessing nuclear weapons has no place in our doctrine.
However, the U.S. intelligence community has assessed with high confidence that Iran did attempt to develop a nuclear bomb in the past. And then there are the American citizens being detained in Tehran, 3 of whom were born in Iran. If there is a deal, would you agree to release the 4 Americans who are being held here? Could that be part of it?
There are Iranian nationals also imprisoned inside the U.S. These people are only in there because they simply tried to circumvent sanctions. And the Americans, we have told them that we can talk to them about this. It can be conducted separately from the nuclear talks. It can be done between the 2 countries. It is a humanitarian issue. This can be negotiated.
You're off to New York. You're going to speak at the United Nations. President Biden is going to be there. Are you open to a meeting with President Biden, a face-to-face?
No, I don't think that such a meeting would happen. I don't believe having a meeting or talk with him will be beneficial.
What do you think the difference is, from your perspective, between the Trump administration and the Biden administration?
The new administration in the U.S., they claim that they are different from the Trump administration. They have said it in their messages to us. But we haven't witnessed any changes in reality.
His major grievance against President Biden is that he has maintained the sanctions on Iran that President Trump imposed.
The sanctions are very tyrannical. This is a tyranny against the people of Iran. It is important to us to have the sanctions lifted.
The sanctions thrust Iran into a 2-year recession, mainly because oil exports from refineries like this one fell overnight from 2.8 million barrels a day to about 200,000. Businesses have been cut off from international banking. With inflation today in Iran at over 40%, virtually everything is more expensive. And yet, we found traffic here as clogged as in New York. And as we saw, Tehran's bazaars are teeming with shoppers.
Hello.
The ones we met were friendly to us.
How are you?
Oh, I'm good. How are you?
Fine, thanks. And you?
Good. Do you study English in school?
No.
One reason for the bustling commerce is something the president calls the resistance economy, in which businesses are encouraged to make more of the things themselves that they used to import. So, do you know where these are made?
Made in Iran.
In Iran?
Yeah.
Homemade blue jeans.
For our country.
Also made in Iran. Washing machines, refrigerators, TVs. They also have their own version of Uber Eats called Snap Food. Iran is home to one of the world's oldest civilizations, dating back to 4000 BC. It's where the foundations of algebra and chemistry were developed. Today, while there's attention to religious tradition in the Islamic Republic, it's one of the most westernized countries in the Middle East, with a well-educated population. This mall could be anywhere in America, with an ice skating rink, a food court with hot dogs and burgers, and the least expected, sexy window displays. And yet, President Raisi just signed a decree making women who don't dress modestly subject to arrest. A young woman died Friday after the morality police took her into custody for violating the rules on head coverings. Eyewitnesses say they saw her being beaten while in a police van. President Raisi's office says he ordered an investigation. Syed Ebrahim Raisi descends from the Prophet Muhammad, as his black turban signifies, according to Shiite Muslim tradition. He's a hardline conservative cleric like his mentor, the supreme leader Ayatollah Khamenei. I want to ask you about your own record. There is a personal sanction against you. You took part in a commission that was responsible for executing up to 5,000 political dissidents. They were hanged or shot by firing squad. I want to ask if you regret that action.
What kind of proof can you offer for this? These are just allegations and claims made by members of a terrorist group.
You're saying that that was not true and that
Anybody who commits a crime in Iran stands trial in official courts of law, and they receive punishments for what they did. They were assassinating people, and what happened to them was exactly proportionate to what they did.
But the U.S. Treasury Department sanctioned Raisi personally for human rights violations over this, and Amnesty International called it a crime against humanity. The president was feisty with us, sprinkling his answers with a predictable antipathy toward Israel and Jewish people. The supreme leader, Ayatollah Khamenei, was scathing when he tweeted on the same subject in English in 2018, Israel is a malignant, cancerous tumor that has to be removed and eradicated. Do you believe the Holocaust happened? That 6 million Jews were slaughtered?
ببینید مسئله تاریخی یک مسئله
Look, historical events should be investigated by researchers and historians.
یک نشانه‌هایی هم وجود داره برای اینکه این اتفاق واقع شده.
There are some signs that it happened. If so, they should allow it to be investigated and researched.
So you're not sure. I'm getting that. You're not sure. What about Israel's right to exist?
ببینید مردم فلسطین یک
You see, the people of Palestine are the reality. This is the right of the people of Palestine who are forced to leave their houses and motherland. The Americans are supporting this false regime there to take root and be established there.
You know that Morocco, Bahrain, Sudan, and the United Arab Emirates have all recognized Israel and have relations with Israel. And it is said that Saudi Arabia is also talking directly with Israel. And I wonder if you'd want to comment on that.
یا کسی که امروز دست داد با رژیم
If a state shakes hands with the Zionist regime, then they are also an accomplice to their crimes, and they are stabbing the very idea of Palestine in the back.
You have vowed revenge on the U.S. government for the killing of General Soleimani. More than 2 years ago, the U.S. killed General Qasem Soleimani in a drone strike. A revered military hero in Iran, he masterminded deadly attacks on American forces throughout the region for years. The Supreme Leader has called for retaliation. Are you intending to retaliate by assassinating officials from the Trump administration?
یعنی کاری که دولت وقت و شخص
What the then American government did, by the direct order of Trump himself, to assassinate Mr. Qasem Soleimani, this was a heinous crime.
اون چیزی که دنبال کردیم و دنبال
We want justice to be served. We are not going to forget about this.
I'm wondering what you mean by justice. Does it mean an eye for an eye? There was this assassination, now we're going to have an answer assassination.
ما از نوع اقداماتی که
That's the type of the actions that the Americans and Zionist regimes are doing in the world. We are not going to carry out the same actions.
And yet, the U.S. Department of Justice has charged a member of Iran's Revolutionary Guard with just that, plotting to assassinate John Bolton, President Trump's former national security advisor. As he prepares for his trip to the UN, President Raisi is defiant. His message? No concessions in the nuclear deal. Iran will not back down, and it can survive the sanctions, which he says could well backfire against the United States.
Yes, they can create restrictions and problems for us and difficulties, but there's a number of countries that are being sanctioned. By doing this, they are bringing them closer together, making them more united, and this will render American sanctions ineffective.
Right, Chinese, Russians, Iranians getting closer.
This approach won't work.
As we ended what seemed to be a cordial conversation, we were surprised when a member of Raisi's staff reached up and blocked one of our cameramen from shooting our goodbyes.
No, it's my camera. No.
Another one of our cameramen's phones was confiscated and held by President Raisi's security team for 2.5 hours.